I've loved children's books all my life. This is why during the pandemic, the first thing I did to treat myself when I had any small win was to purchase a children's book to gift myself. Before the pandemic, I used to always walk over to the children's book section in any library or bookstore because I would love to be dazzled by what new books are out to inspire us and reimagine how we think and live. Yes, who says children's books are just for children? Hi, I'm Monica King, founder and CEO of InnovatorsBox and the host of this podcast, Curious Monica. I'm so excited to welcome you to Season 2 with a job that I've always wondered about as a fan, being a children's book author.
Every child should be able to see his or her journey represented in the media that they consume. Otherwise, their existence is not represented on screen or in books, and that's kind of a shame.
I feel like the stories know how they want to be told, and I've just got to figure it out. So for me, I have this kind of nugget of an idea, and I always write my stories 5, 10, 15 different times through different points of view, different perspectives, rhyming and not rhyming, and all the different things until I find one that fits.
Going in, diving in, I didn't realize how difficult it would be. Firstly, I just thought, okay, I'm writing for kids. I have to make it as easy as possible, use very simple language, and that'll be it. But once I started writing, I realized, this is much harder than I thought.
Welcome to Curious Monica, where we learn how different people thrive at different jobs. As a recently new children's book author, yes, I just published my first children's book. Have you seen my friends, The Adventures of Creativity? I'm over the moon to finally make this come true, as writing a children's book has been a long time dream. And as you know me, I'm curious. I'm curious about what it means to be a children's book author. How is this different from writing a business or a nonfiction book, like myself with Rethink Creativity? Most children's books, such as picture books, have fewer words. So would that mean writing is easier? Also, who gets to decide what book becomes more popular? And why do we still see mostly books by one demographic? As I look back at my own journey as a new children's book author, I'm eager to unveil these questions that we take for granted. Let's start with some fun facts. The children's book publishing industry is a competitive market. In 2021, IBIS World said the market size is $2.5 billion, and it's been one of the industries growing during the pandemic. Over 233 million units were sold in 2017, and probably more now. Many famous books also have a whole series of merchandise and even TV series. Books like Guess How Much I Love You, Peter Rabbit, Dr. Seuss, or The Magic School Bus are classics I loved and children's today still love. So if your book works well, you have readers for generations to come. But here's the truth. While those are the famous ones, what about all the other books? There are over 1 million books published every year just in the United States. And as an author, the question is, how do you navigate this world? Having an idea is one thing. Writing it, getting out in the market, and finding your audience again and again is another. So, one of the first comments I hear from authors, and especially from children's book authors, is understanding your real drive. If you're looking to write to be profitable and famous, you're in for the wrong reason.
So as a writer, even if you go the traditional route, but especially if you're an indie writer, you've got to know how to market. It's kind of a big wives' tale that if you write it, the readers will come. And that's not true, especially now in our global markets and global economies. You're one little book in the middle of millions. And so you need to be able to market. I really, really believe that before you even start writing, before you get to an editor, you need to know who is going to buy your book. Why are they going to buy your book? And how are you going to find them?
Meet Heather Davis, a children's book author in Idaho, an insurance agent by day and children's book author by night. Over the past 6 years, she has written 5 wonderful children's books focused on self-esteem, inclusion, disability awareness, and managing anxiety. Her latest book, Into Justin's World, was recognized as Projects We Love by Kickstarter and has successfully completed her milestones. Congratulations, Heather. As a first-time author, I had to ask, what is your process like and how do you decide what to write about?
Yeah, and I don't know if this has been your experience, but I feel like the stories know how they want to be told, and I've just got to figure it out. So for me, I have this kind of nugget of an idea, and I always write my stories 5, 10, 15 different times through different points of view, different perspectives, rhyming and not rhyming, and all the different things until I find one that fits, that feels like, okay, this is how the story wants to be told. So that's one thing. And that can take a long time. And then it's going through and writing and rewriting. And you have to know this isn't something that comes in a couple days. And if it does, get an editor. Well, anyway, get an editor. But there's probably a lot of things that need to be worked on, especially in a rhyming story. It's funny because those are the ones that really appeal to my analytical side. They're puzzles. I'll have, okay, I want to say this, but how can I say this in a way that's clear, feels free and flowing, but has the right meter and the right rhyme?
Oh yes, those rhymes you read were not created overnight. This seamless experience we feel is all designed by the author. Lots of decision-making and reflection happen behind the scenes to make that possible. So Heather, how do you choose what story you want to write? Tell me a bit more about your recent book, Into Justin's World.
Is probably my most personal one. My oldest son has profound disabilities. When he was 5 years old, he got 4 separate areas of brain damage because of abuse by his biological mother. And so he has, really profound disabilities. He's been written up in medical journals, and he's 28, but developmentally, he's still about 4. But he looks normal. And so it's really hard sometimes for people to understand how different the world is to him in every possible way. The things he sees, the way he processes the information around him, everything is different. And there aren't books where the main character has disabilities unless the book is about that disability. And so with this book, I have 2 goals. I want kids that have disabilities and challenges to have a book where they can see themselves. That's a fun and adventurous and exciting book, and not about how to overcome their challenges. And I want other people to be able to get some ideas of how different the world looks to children who experience these challenges. So that one's called Into Justin's World, and I'm really excited about that one.
Wow. Thank you for your dedication, Heather. That's really powerful and inspiring. No wonder her thoughtful intention was felt by readers and fans. The lack of diversity and representation in all content and field is visible, but especially in literature like children's book publishing. Many are often white female or white male and only written from that lens. A lot of my favorite authors growing up I realized were mostly by white females and white males that had a finite lens. I don't think I ever grew up seeing Asian characters in the books I grew up with in America. This is why having more authors like Heather is so important. And she isn't the only one dedicated to celebrating diverse voices. Meet Helena Koo Rhee, a children's book author in Los Angeles. Her first book, The Turtle Ship, was published in 2018, and her second book, The Paper Kingdom, was published in 2020. And as she continues to write children's books and work in entertainment by day, she became even more determined to write for inclusion, diversity, and equity.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, there is a push for diversity. The push was there before the pandemic, but because of, I think, a bunch of world events, including the ones here in the US like BLM and all the hate crimes against the AAPI community, there's been an even greater push to get representation in literature, in particular children's literature, because the books that we read when we're very, very young, they stay in our minds for the rest of our lives. Some of my favorite books of all time are children's books. And so people are aware of that in the publishing industry. And so we're seeing a huge push for books from BIPOC authors, from authors of marginalized backgrounds, which is fantastic. I think it's time for this because every child should be able to see his or her journey represented in the media that they consume. Otherwise, their existence is not represented on screen or in books, and that's kind of a shame. That's the world I grew up in, but I think things are changing for the little ones in people's lives now, which is wonderful.
So important indeed. Thank you, Helena, for speaking on this. And as you may have guessed, this is not just a phenomena in the United States. Author Tamara Hawk in Sydney, Australia, noticed a similar gap and decided to take her pen to work to create a series where she saw a voice lacking, stories of Muslim culture, history, and heroes.
My background is Bangladeshi, and I'm also Muslim. And I was talking to some friends, and we were talking about, inspirational Muslim figures that we know about. And we realized that there aren't that many that we know about. I mean, there are just so many in our history, but they're not highlighted, or, they've been forgotten, or they don't make it to mainstream media and books. So I did some research, and I found that there are very few children's books who represent these figures. And that's how the story was born.
This is why Tamara wrote the stories of 20 mighty Muslim heroes in summer 2021. Like Helena and Heather, Tamara wanted to give children and all readers diverse role models. Okay, but the mission is one thing. How do you actually make the book come to life? Authors often choose between self-publishing and traditional publishing. Which route should one go? And what is the benefit and cost to one another? Yes, both options have pros and cons. Traditional publishing is an esteemed route, but also a very long route. Self-publishing is faster, and you have more flexibility, but you also have to pay things more upfront. So which one is the right one for you? The answer really is more personal. Both are great options. It just depends on what's more important for you. Let's first start with traditional publishing.
The number one tip that I would give is that rejection is part of the process in traditional publishing. I have been rejected so much in the past, and I know that most of my author friends who've been traditionally published, that's their story as well. And the people who actually see the finish line are the people who, despite such rejections, they keep going. And so having that persistence is probably more important than having talent if you want to be a traditionally published author. Because yes, you need some talent, but you need a whole lot of persistence because the rejections are nonstop. Even after you've been published, I have a ton of ideas. Not all of them are accepted by the publishing industry. I thought that once you become published, it becomes easier and easier. That is not the case. You still need to endure rejection because not all of your ideas will be granted a deal. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, it does not work that way. And so you have to develop a thick skin and get used to the fact that rejection is part of the journey. If you want to be a traditionally published author.
Perspective and persistence indeed. Do you remember how many rejections you had to go through before you got your first book published?
Let's see. So I probably sent out, when I was looking for a literary agent, I probably sent out in the neighborhood of like 50 to 70 what's called query letters. That's where you give your pitch of your book to entice a literary agent to take on your project. And what a literary agent does is they take your project and they sell it to publishing companies. Because publishing companies, most of the big ones like HarperCollins, Simon Schuster, Penguin Random House, they will not look at your manuscript unless it comes through a literary agent. So the literary agent is the first gatekeeper. Anyway, so I sent out query letters, so many of them, and probably got rejected by 99% of them for some of my manuscripts. And then the story was different with The Paper Kingdom. With the Paper Kingdom, I had my manuscript, meaning just the text, not the illustrations. And I said to myself, I'm only going to choose about 5 literary agents that I've been eyeing, and I'm only going to send the manuscript to them because I've already done the whole machine gun tactic of just sending out 50 query letters, a bunch, and just getting a ton of rejection letters back. And I was like, that's just not working. So I'll just target 5. And I was very fortunate with the manuscript for the Paper Kingdom because I got multiple offers of representation, meaning there were several agents who wanted to work with me. So the journey was painful, but with the right manuscript, I really believe that you can really do it. You can get through that tough wall. Yeah.
Wow. 50, 70 query letters? To give you a perspective, these are thoughtfully curated letters where you highlight what your book is about, why you, and why this will be a meaningful project for the agent to consider. Most often, you don't even hear back as they get pitched all the time. I'm going through this process for some of my other books, and I'd say I've already received about 10 rejections and 10 no replies out of the 30 plus. So that means I guess I'm halfway through my list of rejections and waiting, right, Helena? But let's not forget, this is one of the many ways. While traditional publishing is great, that's not the only way to get your book out. This is why you have many authors self-publishing. This means either you publish on your own or you find a smaller independent publisher. This is how I found my publisher, Hello Publisher, for my first book, Have You Seen My Friends? But this is also why you see so many independent authors doing Kickstarters to fund their books. Plus, as we mentioned, there are perks to both worlds. Heather shares more why she loves being an independent publisher and why you may want to consider it too. Hint, you can print it when you want to.
I chose to be an independent author. I'm a little bit of a control person. So I wanted to choose my own illustrators and I wanted to choose how my story is told. So I went that route, but still, in order to have a good book, you have to have a good editor, and you really should have 2. There's the developmental editors that help with things like grammar and how the story is flowing. And then you have, the finishing edits. And if you have a rhyming story, you need another one to help with the rhyming. So that's a big thing. You have illustrators. I mean, for children's books, you can have the best story in the world, but if you have terrible pictures, nobody's going to ever read your story. So illustrators, extremely important. I'm very blessed to have wonderful illustrators. Formatters, people don't know that that's a different thing. Formatting your story, how the words are laid out with the pictures, how the book itself is laid out, that's a whole different process. And then, of course, there's, the printers. There's a lot of things that go into making a book. It's funny, I hear all the time, oh, it's a great way to get passive income. No, it is absolutely not a good way if you want passive income. It's a great way to lose a lot of money that way because you're investing a lot of money at the onset with all of these different professionals, but they make such a big difference so that you can make money later. And especially, I think, the editors, because it's hard to find fault in your own work, and they are there to say, okay, so maybe that's not really what you wanted to say. Try this or ask questions. And that's huge.
Yes, I appreciated Heather's breakdown into this because whether you choose self-publishing or traditional publishing, both take a lot of care and work. In fact, Heather says the very thing that Helena said that you'll need to be good at to be a children's book author. Have thick skin.
But you really have to have thick skin to be a children's book writer. The first time I sent my book to an editor and it came back with almost everything marked in red, I just sat down and cried because I thought it was so good. I was so excited. And she just marked everything up, and then took me a couple days to put my big girl panties on and think, okay, I can do this. And then I went through and my book is so much better because of that.
Yes, teamwork makes the dream work. Similar to Heather, I've had to find editors, illustrators, book formatters, on top of a publisher to make this all come to life. It's a lot of people. And, as Heather said, someone who is willing to really think about putting the investment now to see the return in the long run. Tamara shares the reflection too.
I thought, well, going in, diving in, I didn't realize how difficult it would be. Firstly, well, I just thought, okay, I'm writing for kids. I have to make it as easy as possible, use very simple language, and that'll be it. But once I started writing, I realized, oh, this is much harder than I thought. So I started reading children's books. I hadn't done that since I left school. It was a revelation for me. It was, it felt magical to read. And not only that, I realized that I do not give children as much credit as I should have. That's the age that their imagination is going wild. And being able to tap into that, they're developing so many skills and they're developing their maturity. So being able to tap into that is actually not an easy task. So, just, saying that A is for apple and B is for ball and leaving it at that, that's not fun for kids and it's not an enjoyable read. So I have to change my perspective. I'm still trying to develop that. I've written one book so far. Looking back at it, I know that I could have done a better job. So I now started working on the second part in the series. And I'm hoping to make it more of a narrative style. And I'm actually getting some coaching and mentoring from some established children's writers to develop those skills further. So yeah, that's how it started. And it's actually been a lot of work. You have this idea. I guess it's a great first step that, when you have an idea you want and you make the commitment to follow through with it. That's probably the challenging part for a lot of people, the challenging step. So once you take that step and you go through with the process, you then realize that after having written the book, that was probably the easiest part. So I decided to self-publish because I thought, it's just a quicker process and getting the book out there would have been quicker. And that's the route that I decided to take. There's also a lot of initial investment that goes into it because you've got the illustrator's costs, you've got editing, you've got formatting, book design, and then you've got all the marketing costs that come with it. So the marketing part is actually the hardest part. The writing part was the easy part.
Well said indeed. Children's book writing is a different kind of writing. And I feel unless you write one, we don't realize this. Even for me, having written Rethink Creativity, my nonfiction book, I thought writing a children's book would be easier. But it was a different kind of challenge. How do you make it easier to read but not too easy as A is for apple? As that leaves no room for creativity, fun, or engagement. And like Heather, Tamara shares how the journey of self-publishing helped her want to be a self-published author, even if it required a lot of marketing and upfront investment. I'm still learning about this, and I'm humbly noticing how much work and care goes in every day, especially as someone who now has 2 books around the same time.
It is another job because you constantly have to be engaged in marketing, in putting yourself out there, making yourself visible, promoting your book, finding avenues to promote the book, connecting with other authors, connecting with schools, connecting with other organizations that would be interested in the book. So there's actually a lot that goes into it. And I think you need to do a lot of research before taking the step. It could be a passion project, just that, you want to bring that book to the world, and that's completely fine too. But, if you want to make it into, say, a side hustle or even a full-time career one day, there is a lot of research and involvement that goes into it.
Oh, yes, indeed. I feel like I'm juggling multiple jobs right now. Did I say doing a podcast is like a full-time job too? And I have my company, team, and clients. Okay, I'm not complaining. I'm merely saying that all the content we consume were really put together across multiple people and with care. And while for us, it took 10 minutes to an hour to watch something, it took others hours and months to develop. I'm grateful for all content creators, writers, and now even more so of children's book authors who are taking the time to write to empower the next generations. Any other final advice you'll share with future or current children's book authors?
Use some friends as a sounding board, and not just friends. There are lots of groups on social media, on Facebook, where you can get critiques. If you have already written the book, I think that's a good place to start. When it comes to friends and family, they will be very supportive. They'll cheer you on, and they might not give you the honest feedback that you need. So I think it's, getting the critique to make your book the best that it can be is critical. And also, more professional, or, if you can get another author or a writer who can review it as well, that's also great, because it helps in fleshing out your story. Sometimes we need that harsh critique to know whether our book can work, whether it can resonate with kids, and whether it can be a success. You put in so much effort, you don't want the book to be out there and then, it fails or you get crickets.
So as a writer, even if you go the traditional route, but especially if you're an indie writer, you've got to know how to market. So knowing how to market your book, understanding social media marketing and how to have a social media presence is huge. Understanding Amazon, because you're not going to get around Amazon. So, just understanding how that works and how to advertise. All of those things are things that I don't think people really understand when they first start. You don't think you're going to have to really understand all the nuances of marketing and social media and running ads to be a children's book author, but you really do.
In other aspects of my life, I try to exercise creativity because, as you mentioned, publishing is so slow, and I want to see that final result quickly. And so anything from cooking to any little side project you might have. My other passion is art, so I've started to do more art just to fuel that desire of mine to be creative.
Yes! From finding trusted allies who can critique, learning about marketing, and finding creative outlets, being a children's book author means really thinking about the holistic journey. Thank you, Helena, Heather, and Tamara, again for taking a moment to join us to share your journey as a children's book author. Please take a moment to visit today's guest profiles and get a copy of their books. We need more diverse authors writing stories with a purpose, and your support would mean the world to all of us. Yes, me too. I've also added my book so you could find my book too. Have You Seen My Friends? A picture book that empowers young readers to discover and build their creativity. And yes, it's available now on Amazon and other stores. Thanks again for joining us. I hope today's conversation inspired you. This was Monica Kang, your host at Curious Monica and founder of InnovatorsBox. Please take a moment to subscribe, share, and leave a review. Next week, we'll be visiting a field that many of us probably engage in for fun: movies. What is it like to make movies, and what is it like working on bringing diversity in the film industry? Curious to learn more? Join me next week at Curious Monica. I'll see you there. Oh hey, I'm Monica Kang at InnovatorsBox, and I hope you're enjoying our show, Curious Monica. This show is brought together by our amazing podcast team at InnovatorsBox Studios. Shout out to our audio engineer, Sam Lemmert, Kelly Gravo on marketing, website designer, Kriti Pandey, graphic designer, Monica Escobar, social media graphics on Leah Orsini, Sara Piedrate, and Floor on project assistant, and Luke Helder on original music. And of course, this show is hosted and directed by me, Monica Kang, founder and CEO of InnovatorsBox and InnovatorsBox Studios. To continue the curiosity and the creativity of the workplace, please visit us at innovatorsbox.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share. Every bit helps. We'd love to hear what you're curious about and what mysteries we can uncover in our next episodes. See you next week!